In this video, I'm going to teach you one of the most underrated and underappreciated concept in chess, which is a concept of tempo. So what is tempo in chess? Tempo in chess essentially means time, and it's about winning time and losing time. And when I say time, I don't mean the clock, right? I don't mean like the 10-minute time that you start with in a rapid game. I mean time in terms of how fast and how quickly you are developing your pieces and how slowly your opponent is developing his pieces. So let's take a look at this position right here, and I will illustrate what this concept is all about. One of the ideas in this position for black, one of the moves that black wants to play, is this move d takes c4. This is positionally something black wants to play because black wants to open up this diagonal, because eventually b6 will be played and this bishop will go to b7, and you want to take on c4, so you open up this diagonal for your bishop. However, if you do this right away, the bishop just simply captures, and this actually kind of helps white develop. So there's actually a very clever idea in this position, and this is something I talked about in my other video that I posted recently on the Queen's Gambit decline. I'm gonna bring more examples, not just Queen's Gambit, but I feel like this is a fantastic opening to showcase the concept of tempo. So let's say we castle here with the black pieces, and now what we want our opponent to do is we want them to move the bishop, because after they move the bishop, now we take on c4, and as you can see, we have achieved the exact same position, except we won a tempo. We won a move because we castled, and white lost a tempo because he went to d3, and then he ended up recapturing on c4 anyways. So it took two moves for him to get his bishop to c4, and we have won a tempo by castling. This is an extra move that we have won. Now from here, we can continue with something like a6. Let's say white castles, we go b5, another attack. So we are going b5 with a tempo, bishop has to move. We go bishop to b7, and I'm going to play c5 with the black pieces in this position. Now, similarly to what we just did, what white wants to do in this position is to take on c5, because earlier on we moved the bishop to e7, and this makes black recapture the pawn on c5. So white is sort of getting that tempo back by capturing on c5. But a very common mistake in these types of positions is to play a move like queen to e2, which looks fine, but now after knight b to d7, there's really no point in taking on c5 anymore, because now we don't have to take with the bishop, we can take with the knight. And the knight wants to be on c5 anyways, not the bishop. And as a matter of fact, what's funny is that this wins yet another tempo for the black pieces, because it's an attack on the bishop, and bishop has to go back to c2. Now, for a lot of you, you might not understand why it's so important to go bishop c2. A lot of you might think, okay, I can just go rook to d1, and after takes, this is totally fine for white. But the problem is now black has the bishop pair, and this bishop is going to stand here unopposed. As you get higher and higher rated in chess, you will understand the scenarios where the bishops are better than the knights, and in this case black has a substantial advantage because of the bishop pair. So that's why black has to play this move, bishop to c2. But now look at this. Even though we are playing with the black pieces, we're supposed to be down a tempo because white gets to move first. But look at our development. We have 4 pieces developed, and also kind of this queen, it's on an open file. It's not developed yet. It's not really doing anything on the d file, but we have 4 pieces developed, and white has these 3, but also like maybe the queen. I will put this in a, how do I make the yellow circle? There we go. We basically caught up to white's development with black because we won 2 tempi. First, by capturing on c4. Let me go all the way back. First tempo that we won was when we captured on c4. Second tempo was when we played b5, because it's a move that we want to play anyways, and we are playing this with a threat, so bishop goes back. And third tempo that actually white failed to capitalize on and white failed to gain back was this one right here, when they didn't take on c5 and we took on c5 with the knight, and then this wins a third tempo for the black pieces because black managed to get this knight to a very active square with a threat. So this forces the bishop to go back. Now, this might not seem that important to you at first. However, these small advantages, if you make them a couple of times, they will add up eventually. So maybe you're playing this with the black pieces and you're like, okay, I won a tempo, but so what? Big deal. But the thing is, let's say you win a second tempo, let's say you win a third tempo, let's say you win a fourth tempo. Now we're talking about a substantial advantage in chess. So a tempo itself will not win you the game, but it puts you one step closer to advantage. Now I'm going to show you yet another famous opening where the concept of tempo and tempi is very relevant. This opening is the Scandinavian defense. Now, a lot of people here like to play this move queen to e6. Now, first of all, this is already a winning of a tempo for white because black brought out the queen very early. We went knight c3 and we're winning a tempo. So black might try to give a check here to try to get that tempo back. So move the queen out of the way with a check, and after we block, they might even go queen g6. But the problem is that this type of chess simply doesn't work because black is investing 1, 2, 3, and 4 tempi in order to win this pawn on g2. And this just simply won't work because white in this time can develop very, very quickly and he can bring out the pieces very, very quickly. And let's say knight to e5 is played, we can even give up yet another pawn on h2 because our development is so much superior that there's nothing that black can do. Black can try to start pushing this pawn. Okay, fine, if we're under attack, we will address this threat. We will go rook g5 and then we will queenside castle. And all of a sudden, look at this, all of our pieces are playing in the game, while for black, only 2 pieces are playing in the game, and maybe this pawn, which is potentially dangerous, but it's not dangerous because there are ways for white to deal with it. So let's say black tries to go h2 here, we can go with something like queen to c4. And let's say black tries to go bishop to e6, we can take the pawn on c7. And let's say black plays this very clever move, queen to g1. Now, of course, you don't have to remember this whole line. I'm just trying to show you an example. This just simply doesn't work because takes, bishop to b5 check. And this is just a discovered attack. We win the queen back, and all of a sudden, we're up a whole queen. So this is going to be a completely winning position. Well, queen for a rook would be more precise. But the reason why I bring this example is because I want you to understand that in chess, time is valuable. Getting your pieces out quickly is valuable. You need to be aware of that and you need to develop your pieces. Think of it this way. Right? If you have an army and your enemy also has an army, but your army is more mobilized and more prepared, while your opponent's army is not prepared, your army is going to prevail. And that's how chess works. If you're able to get your pieces out quicker than your opponent, you're going to mobilize your army faster than your opponent is able to, and you're going to get winning positions. Now let's take a look at this position right here. This is a very typical London system, and a very common mistake that I see people make is that they play moves like bishop to b4 check. This is a bad move because white will play c3, block your bishop with a pawn, and this wins a tempo for the white pieces because white wants to play c3 anyways. It's the London system, so white wants to have the pawn on c3 anyways. So this just simply helps white develop. So this is a very common sort of a tempo loss that people do at lower levels. And the thing is that it can easily be avoided by just simply moving the bishop to e7. So instead of giving a check and then retreating to e7 or d6, go to e7 willingly, because now at least when white plays c3, now it's your turn again, instead of it being white's turn and instead of white developing even faster. There are very rare cases in chess where you wanna give a check with a bishop and you can be blocked with a pawn, and that's actually a good thing because it takes away the development square for the knight. Again, these are like very, very niche cases. You don't have to worry about those. But as a general rule of thumb, whenever you give a check with the bishop and you can be blocked by a pawn, it's generally not good to give that check with a bishop. When it comes to tempo, I like to put positions into 2 categories. There are tempo-heavy positions and there are non-tempo heavy positions. So for example, this is a Scotch Gambit and this is an example of a tempo-heavy position. Now, the reason why it's a tempo-heavy position is because the center is open right now. Well, after you capture it, the center opens up and there are many targets in black's camp, and black's position just hangs on a knife's edge. So if you make one mistake, you might be lost pretty much immediately. So that's why you have to be careful with the black pieces in these types of positions. You cannot play moves like h6 and then a6 and then b5. You have to develop as quickly as possible because it is a tempo heavy position. And this is just one sample line. Of course, again, you don't have to remember all of this, but something like this can happen, and all of a sudden black is getting completely overrun here, and black is getting completely decimated and attacked because he wasted the opening playing moves like h6 and a6. Typically, what makes tempo heavy positions tempo heavy is the fact that the center is open. But you have positions like this as well. Let me actually go back to this position right here. So this is an example of a non-tempo heavy position. And in this case, black can play moves like a6, h6, and black will be totally fine because the center is closed. It's not a tempo heavy position, and there is no immediate rush to just develop quickly. Now, that doesn't mean that you should play stupid moves anyways. You should always pursue the best move. But in these types of positions, both sides can afford to break some opening principles, such as moving the piece multiple times in an opening, because it's not a tempo heavy position and you cannot get punished for it right away. But if you try to do the same thing in this position, and if you try to move the same piece multiple times and do something stupid, you're immediately getting a worse position, like you're lost on the spot. There's queen d5 here, and then there's queen h5, queen c5, some tactics, and you're basically immediately lost. You need to follow principles, you need to develop quickly. But then you have these close sort of non-tempo heavy positions where you can afford to move the same piece multiple times, try to trade off your bad piece, and you can't be punished for it because the center is closed, making this position a non-tempo heavy position. Sometimes in an endgame, you actually want to lose a tempo on purpose in order to put your opponent in what's called a zugzwang, where they don't have any good moves. So in this position, if we play a move like king to c5, there's king c7 by black, and there's no progress here. You can't really do anything here from the white pieces. So this doesn't do anything. If we go king to d6, there's always king to d8, and this doesn't do anything either, because if we push the pawn, king c8 will be played, and if we go king c6, then it's a stalemate. If we move away, of course, we lose the pawn, and this position is a draw. So if we go back to the beginning position, these two moves do not make any progress for the white pieces. So what's the correct technique here for white? The correct technique is to do what's called a triangulation. And what you want to do is basically you want to lose a tempo on purpose. You want to achieve the exact same position that you have on the board right now, but you want it to be black's move instead of white's move. So what does that look like? Let's say in this position we play king to d4. And if our opponent goes something like king d8, now we want to play king c4. And now if he plays king to c8, now we want to play king d5. And we have achieved triangulation here. And now this is a problem for black, because if black comes forward, now we go king c5, but now it's black to move, and black has to give up the b6 square, and this is going to be a winning endgame for the white pieces. And if instead of king c7, let's say black plays king d8, then we can go king d6, and now we can go c7. But remember, it's not white to move. If this position was white to move, this would be a draw, because king c6 is a stalemate. Any other king move loses the pawn. But it's black to move. And because it's black to move, after king b7, we can go king d7. Now we have to be just a little bit careful in this position. There is king a7 here. And if we actually make a queen, this is a stalemate. So this is a draw, which is kind of annoying. But, I mean, we have a very funny way to win. We can just make a rook, and this is just completely winning for the white pieces. So now I want to introduce you to a new concept called the initiative, and initiative is very closely related to tempo. Now, initiative in chess is a temporary advantage where you're making improving moves, and all of those improving moves come with a tempo, come with a threat. So your opponent cannot improve the position himself. He has to react to your threats. So in this position, actually, this position is from one of my own games, although there are actually a couple of hundred games in the Lichess database where this position was reached. But at the time I didn't know that. I actually got this position in a game and I was able to find the right sequence of moves. Now in this position, first let me show you what the wrong move is. The wrong move would be knight to f6. This, just simply retreating, it's fine. Right? Knight to f6 is a fine move. It's not great, but it's okay. The problem is that in chess, if you want to beat your opponent, you should not be making okay moves. You should be more forceful. You should be more vicious. So that's why in these types of positions, you always have to look at forward-looking moves instead of backward moves. So knight to g3 is the move that I played in the game. This hits the rook, also hits the pawn, which means that the rook cannot move along the first rank because then black would just win a pawn on h5. So instead, rook to h3 to keep an eye on this pawn. And now, of course, the knight is under attack. We have to move the knight. And now knight to f5. We are putting a knight on a very, very nice active square while also creating a threat. Let's say bishop to f2 is played, moving the bishop out of the way, very simply. Now, on the next move, white will play g4 and kick out our knight. So we have to be very fast here because we know that white will play g4. Initiative is a temporary advantage. If you don't use it, you will lose it. So every move has to come with force. So in this case, the move that I played was pawn to c5, and opponent had a better defense here. He could have apparently played a move like f4, giving up the pawn, and then he had some other defenses. I'm not going to get into this though. You can analyze this on your own, but my opponent played a very natural looking move c3. Of course, when this rook moved away to h3, it stopped guarding the rook on d1. That's why this c5 move works, because we're taking advantage of the fact that this rook on d1 is undefended. So c3 is a logical move because it just simply defends the pawn. And after captures and pawn captures, again, g4 is being threatened. So you have to play forcing moves. And would you look at that? In this position, I played the move bishop to c5. And after bishop to c5, this pawn will simply be lost. There's not much that white can do here. White in the game played pawn to g4, and I played bishop takes d4, counter-attacking his bishop. And after takes, I played knight takes d4, and here I was up a pawn, and I went on to convert this endgame. So initiative is just one of those concepts that's very important in chess, and I might make a whole separate video on it in the future. But the way it is related to tempo is that every move is a tempo winning move. For example, knight to g3 wins a tempo. Knight to f5, another tempo. c5, another tempo winning move because it creates a threat. And then takes, of course, is a forcing move. Bishop to c5, another move that comes with a threat. And of course, takes leads to devastation here, as you can see. So it's like collecting coins, kind of. If you win a single tempo, you win a single coin. But if you win like one coin, then you win another coin, and then you win another coin and another coin. Now you're building up some wealth with all these coins. I know this is a very silly analogy, but you know, I thought it was kind of funny. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.